Welcome back to You Asked For It. For those of you here for the first time, You Asked For It is my weekly segment where I get questions or inquiries from my social media friends, fans, followers about a situation that they may be going through, or they're seeking solutions to problems they're having with their dogs. So welcome, and hey, if you like what you see on my channel, consider subscribing so you can stay up to date on all things about dog care, dog training, dog rescue, dog health, you name it. So this week on You Asked For It, we have a Facebook question from Alyssa. My dog constantly barks at visitors. Okay, so not really a question, but I think I know where she's going with this. So this is a really common problem that a lot of dog owners experience with their dogs barking at visitors. And the level of barking, the intensity of the barking, the intent of the barking may vary by individual dogs and situations. And in this case, I'm not sure if Alyssa is experiencing any kind of quote-unquote aggression or any kind of assertive behavior from their dogs, or if they're just barking. So we'll just assume that the dog is just one of those obsessive barkers at the visitors. When the visitors come in, maybe the dog settles down when they sit down. If the visitors get up to move, the dog might start barking again. It could be any one of those things, so we'll try to keep this as generic as possible, including the solutions. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is you have to identify if there is a trigger. Is there a precursor to your dog's behavior? Like the doorbell. Does the doorbell set them off, and that's kind of what gets this train rolling? Could be a knock on your door. Heck, it could even be a car pulling up into your driveway. Your dog or dogs hear the engine coming up the driveway and they know someone's there, and that's the trigger that gets them going. So you need to definitely address triggers before you could address the barking. And it's very simple. You have to kind of recreate the crime, so to speak. So if you're home and you're watching TV with your dogs, the best thing I like to suggest to people is to record your doorbell or record a knock on the door, whatever the trigger is for your dogs to start barking, record that on your smartphone. And when you're sitting around the house just watching TV or maybe reading a book, just randomly play the doorbell and the knock. And your dogs are gonna go nuts, they're gonna start barking, and you just completely ignore them. And now what's gonna happen when this doorbell or the knock occurs? The dog's gonna rush to the door, right? And then what happens? Nothing. Nobody comes to the door, nobody pulls up the driveway, you don't get up and greet someone. And the hope here is that you start to desensitize the dogs to the sound of the doorbell or the knock on the door, okay? It just becomes part of their environment. It's something they hear all the time, that they no longer have an association with visitors coming over. And is this the end all and be all? No, of course not, obviously. But if a trigger is the doorbell or the knock, this is just a quick solution to help desensitize the dogs to the sound and the trigger of people coming into the house. And it's a lot more in depth, completely modifying the behavior. But again, this is just a quick tip here on this You Asked For It segment for Alyssa. Here's a couple of solutions that Alyssa or anyone watching could certainly try to help alleviate some of the dog's excessive barking when visitors come over. When you know your visitors are on their way or they're pulling up in front of your house, you could take your dog outside. Let them greet the visitors outside. Maybe the visitors give your dogs a couple of sit commands and a couple of treats, and you walk in together. That could certainly alleviate the barking. If that alone doesn't work, you could do the same thing. Go outside, let them greet your visitors, a couple of sits, a couple of treats, and go for a short walk. Going for a short walk, doing something together as a group, could also help alleviate barking once they get inside the house. And once your visitors are inside the house, you could actually do a quick little obedience session inside. Maybe just a come, sit down real quick. They give a couple of treats. Maybe have a high value food reward like a Kong available too, where the visitors can give the dogs a couple of commands with a couple of treats. And then at the end of this little quick session, they give the Kong toy with the peanut butter to preoccupy the dog. That could dissociate the dog from its previous behavior of barking excessively. And if the Kong doesn't work, you could do other recreational chews to follow up those little quickie obedience sessions. Maybe a cow ear or a bully stick, something along those lines. And I could put a link up there to, or up there, I always forget. It's up one of those spots. You figure by now I would figure out which way it goes. Anyway, I'll throw the link up there to a video I have for good recreational chews. So that would also be a good option. And you could do all of these, obviously. Greet them outside, quick sitting down, little treat, go for a little walk, come inside, another quick obedience session, and then maybe like a Kong filled with peanut butter or a recreational chew, something along those lines. So you're doing these things together as a group. The dog will dissociate from its previous barking behavior and will start associating visitors with all this good stuff. Barking isn't a part of it. And finally, correction. I know everybody hears the C word and they're like, oh my God, no! I'm not talking about beating your dog, it's not what I'm talking about, but there are ways that you can correct the dog to disconnect it briefly from barking so you can redirect it onto a more positive and constructive behavior. So you can implement the correction by putting the dog on the leash when people come over, and if they start barking a little bit, just give a little light, quick snap on the leash to disconnect your dog for a split second. The dog will have to look at you and acknowledge that sensation, and then you do a couple of sits and downs, give some treats, get the visitors involved. That could certainly work. Obviously that requires repetition, like all the stuff that I'm mentioning here in this video. All of this repetition is required, right? And people have heard me say it a gazillion times, repetition creates reliability. That's why dogs bark excessively. The repetition of barking causes that to perpetuate. So a little leash pop, and I don't want to hear that it impacts your relationship and it's cruel and inhumane. It's not. It's ridiculous. We're doing a quick leash snap. We're not tugging the dog and flinging it around in circles, okay? It's just a quick leash pop, just to disconnect the dog from its behavior. You could use a squirt bottle. I'm sure you've heard of people using squirt bottles to disconnect the behavior. Now, if you're going to use a squirt bottle, never squirt a dog in the face. In fact, never do anything negative to a dog in the face. Anything around the face should always be positive. If you're gonna use a squirt bottle in this instance, you wanna squirt the dog's butt, because you squirt the dog's butt when it's barking, and this is gonna happen. Right? The dog's gonna turn around. It has to acknowledge that sensation. And it's that split second of disconnecting the dog from the barking, now we redirect it onto some sits and downs with some yummy treats. A clicker is a great way to disconnect the dog from any behavior for that matter, right? And people are wondering why I have clicker in with correction, because when I think of correction, I think of disconnecting a dog from a behavior for a split second. That's how I interpret correction, and that's why I use correction, so I can redirect the dog onto something more positive and constructive. So yes, a clicker could certainly be used to disconnect that dog from barking for a split second so you can redirect it. A loud noise like a whistle, right? A dog whistle, a referee whistle like you see in athletics. You could certainly do something like that to disconnect the dog from a behavior real quick. And one of my favorites, believe it or not, you know those little squeak toys that they have inside the plush animals? Yeah, well, they sell them individually too. A squeak toy is a great way to disconnect the dog from a behavior so you can redirect it onto something else. So try some of these, try all of these, try whatever works. The important thing is that you stay at it, because like I said, repetition creates reliability. The more repetition and the more success you have, the more likely your dog is going to do what you want her or him to do. So don't get discouraged, don't get stressed, don't get frustrated. Your dog is more likely to respond to you when you're calm and you're relaxed and you're confident and you're completely in tune with your dog. Well, I'll see you guys next time on You Asked For It.